Welcome to the Kopernik Observatory. My name is Drew Desker. I'm the director here at Kopernik. And I want to thank you for joining us this evening. Also want to welcome those watching on the live stream. Let's see here. I always get started. Oh, I know that guy in the back. Just a quick survey. Who's here for the first time or not since your fourth grade field trip? All right, a few people. All right, very good. Who here are members? All right, excellent. Well, what I'd like to point out is the people that raise their hands second actually have a pretty sort of a valuable piece of information. The a Kopernik membership that gets you into any of our Friday night programs here, but we belong to what's called the ASTC, Association of Science and Technology Centers, and it's a consortium of over 350 other science centers that honor each other's memberships. So with your Kopernik membership, you could go to the Robertson Museum, you could go to the Corning Museum of Glass, or the Museum of Science and Technology up in Syracuse, or the Intrepid Museum down in New York City, or the Franklin Institute down in Philly. So, and what's nice about it is that, in fact, a number of years ago, I took my daughter down there to the Franklin Institute. Had we walked in and paid street price for that one day, it would have cost more than a year's membership here at Kopernik. So if you like this kind of place, might be something to consider to get a membership. So we've actually been open for over 50 years as a public observatory, but also a informal STEM education facility. This week we had a whole slew of first graders come up here for a telescope petting zoo and learning about how light works. We of course had to give them a tour of the observatory. They got to look through telescopes. So we do a lot of school outreach during the school year. But during the summer, we actually have a pretty extensive summer camp. In fact, if you go to our website here, you go down to summer camps. And these are week-long day camps for students that will be entering second grade through high school. They are all are not in the same camp, obviously. But there's a wide range of topics that we're offering in our summer camps. Some just general science, but also secrets of code, robotics. Both the elementary and middle school robotics has already sold out. Our CAD Ventures just sold out. We do a thing on virtual reality. We're doing a camp on rocket design, and I do a program called Return to the Edge of Space, where our students will build a payload that will launch on a weather balloon that will basically go up to over 100,000 feet. And once the balloon bursts, we then track it with ham radio beacon and collect the payload back again. And we just got word this week that we're going to be able to add another camp called Welcome Aboard the International Space Station, where our students will learn about what kind of training astronauts go through, what kind of work they do on the International Space Station. I talk about satellite orbits and radio communication, and our students will be able to talk to an astronaut on the International Space Station using the ham radio station we have here. So they'll be able to actually ask a question of an astronaut, and while the astronaut is screaming by at 17,500 miles an hour, we'll answer their questions. So that's always a lot of fun. We do some other programs as well. We do a program called, let me scroll back up here, Rocket Fest. And this is an opportunity for families and even adults to build one of those Estes rockets and then come on up here in this case it'll be on May 30th. We'll check out your rocket, make sure it's ready to go, then put the engine inside, and then you get to go outside and hit the button that launches it up 100, 500, 1,000 feet. Last year we launched 154 rockets over a day. And so if playing with rockets is your thing, check out Rocket Fest. But one of the things that I really enjoy doing are these Friday night programs. It's an opportunity for us to really extend our sort of lifelong learning. Although I don't have any, this is rare, we don't have any youth in here. I always make a point of saying, look around because there are a lot of people here with gray hair, and it's really it's a great model for them to understand that learning is really a lifelong effort, and there's so much to learn. I remember when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, watching that on TV, and I really wish I could live another 50 or 100 years just to see how far technology, medicine is going to progress. I always like to tell the kids, when I was your age, I used to have to walk to the TV to change the channel. Not so much anymore. In fact, I think I dare you to find a knob on the TV to actually change the channel. But our Friday night programs have been a great opportunity for us to expand our knowledge. If you go to our website, go into our experiences under public programs, we list what's coming up. So tonight's program is on ticks and tick-borne diseases. Next week is talk about science and religion and the pursuit of happiness. This is actually part 4 of a series, sort of in the Rocketry area. Following Friday, students from Binghamton University, their Aero Bing Club, they're working on a really high-powered rocket that will ultimately, they're trying to get out to the Kaiman line with that area where officially you crossed into space. We'll be doing an actual hands-on talk about virtual reality. So a lot of good stuff coming up. And what's nice about it is that we live stream all of it. So even if you're unable to come up here on a particular Friday night, you can watch it live on our live stream, or for that matter, you could go to our YouTube channel and watch it at your convenience at some point in the future. So these are the ones that are coming up. But last week there was a talk about how drones are making the air safe for the world, basically using drones to look for landmines. We've had a talk about fossils and how we can reconstruct the Earth's history. We even had engineers from Lockheed Martin just in a week ago who wrote the software for the Orion capsule. Remember that the Artemis mission that just went to the moon? The dashboard that those astronauts used in the capsule, that software was written in Owego, New York. And those engineers that were part of that team were up here talking about that. So these Friday night programs are always great, but we even do some live observing programs. So last year, there was a lunar eclipse that none of you saw because it started at 2:30 in the morning, or very few of you saw at least. And Jenny Carty, our live stream astronomer, who's actually driving our live stream this evening, was up here and did a quick time lapse of that lunar eclipse. So you start seeing the Earth's shadow blocking the sun's light, and eventually she'll change the exposure so we can actually start seeing the blood moon. And you also notice that the world did not end, as is often procrastinated. And then it'll eventually, we'll get to the other side where the Earth starts to slip past the sun and lighten up the moon. So a few years ago we had a lunar eclipse that we did, and in the comment section people were saying we left NASA's live stream because we like yours better. And that really is a testament to how Jenny drives those live streams. So thank you, Jenny. All right, so you all came up here for the TikTok, and sorry, yeah, I had to. It's in my contract. I actually have to say that. So, but we are so very fortunate to have researchers from Binghamton University, engineers, researchers from the area here that are able to come and talk about the work that they do and share that information with you. And so this evening we have Mandy she drove down from Cooperstown, so I appreciate the the extra effort to get here. And we're going to turn this right over to you. So we'll get you up there in a second.
Oh, it is working. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Mandy. So I did my graduate work here down in Binghamton. I am currently the Associate Director of the Tick-Borne Disease Research Center down here, and I also work at the Northeast Center for Occupational Health and Safety up in Cooperstown. So we're going to talk about the kinds of ticks we have around here, what sort of diseases they carry, and how we can prevent tick bites. That's the most important part here, right? So our biggest foe is the deer tick, this one on the left here. This is what we see most often. When we see ticks, when we get a tick bite, it's usually this guy. They can carry Lyme disease, anaplasmosis, babesiosis, Borrelia miyamotoi, which is a relapsing fever, and Powassan virus. After I go through what diseases these ticks carry, I'll go into what these different pathogens do to humans. We also have dog ticks. These are the ones on the right. They're not just on dogs, they bite people as well. They carry Rocky Mountain spotted fever. That's much more prevalent further downstate. Tularemia and tick paralysis, which is very rare, although I'm told we do have a friend online that's from Australia, so you probably know all too well about tick paralysis. We also have the Lone Star tick. It's not super well established here, but it's certainly increasing in number. This one can cause ehrlichiosis, tularemia, alpha-gal, which is relatively new to us, and we'll talk about it, and also tick paralysis. And then we also have the brown dog tick. This one is huge, and it doesn't carry any pathogens, so to be honest, this is the one I would most want to run into than the others, but it is very rare. You don't really see them around here that often. They are known to carry Rocky Mountain spotted fever in the Southwest, but again, here, as of yet, they aren't known to carry any human pathogens. So Lyme disease. So I do have on each of these slides the picture of the tick and the life stages that can transmit these to humans. Most of, not all, most of the time, most of these pathogens cannot be transmitted by larval ticks. They're very, very tiny. I'm going to embarrass myself. I have a bag of ticks. So they're dead, I promise. They cannot hurt you. Sometimes people like to take a look for size. You can take them out of this bag. They're all in vials. If any vial is leaking, it's just rubbing alcohol. Nothing can hurt you. So you're welcome to pass those around. We'll talk about the sizes of them. But generally, those larval ticks are harmless to us, which is good because most people can't see them anyway. So Lyme disease is a bacteria. Most of these take time. Generally, besides alpha-gal, you're not going to get bitten and instantly be infected with whatever it may be carrying. So the transmission process for Lyme generally takes about 36 hours. It's important to note that this is under perfect lab conditions. So this bacteria lives in the midgut of the tick. So as it's feeding, it's kind of this gross backwash cycle. So the tick is pulling your blood, it's taking your blood, it's keeping the red blood cells and returning the plasma to you. So in that backwash cycle, that's when this bacteria comes from the midgut and then can get into you. So that process takes time. However, when you're not in a lab setting with lab-reared ticks that you know when they fed and when they didn't, this could start earlier. So some people, they swear, the tick could not have been on me for more than 10 hours and I was infected. It's completely possible. If it's on something out in the wild that can groom itself, like in a possum or a raccoon or another person, right? That transmission process that has started. The bacteria is starting to migrate, so if it gets groomed, whatever falls off for whatever reason, that window is shorter. I just like to make note of that. The symptoms, typically 3 to 30 days after exposure is when they start to appear. A localized erythema migrans rash is not super common. About 20 to 30% of people do not get this rash. So there's pictures on the bottom right here. So typically we talk about the bullseye. The bullseye is even less common than kind of a non-specific rash. So that's kind of like your early localized stage. You get these flu-like symptoms, headache, fever, muscle aches, things like that. And then as it disseminates, this is when that bullseye radiates. If you have that, it grows. if you have the bullseye. And this can cause severe joint pain, Bell's palsy, so it's paralysis of half of the face. Some people it's permanent, sometimes it's not permanent. Cognitive difficulties, and then you can have persisting late-stage Lyme, where you have this persistent joint pain, persistent inflammation, neurological and cognitive dysfunction, and some nervous system disorders. So chronic Lyme disease, I could spend the entire talk talking about chronic Lyme disease. Very controversial. So we know that some people are infected with Lyme, they're treated for Lyme, they do not get better. And it sort of waxes and wanes. People kind of have flare-ups. It's debilitating. It is absolutely terrible for people that experience this. The three main areas affected are joints, nervous system, and skin. The Infectious Disease Society of America does not recognize chronic Lyme disease as a condition. Therefore, insurance does not cover treatment for a condition that's not real. So it's very frustrating for people that have this. It's because the mechanism is unknown. It's not delayed treatment, it's not delayed diagnosis. No one knows what the cause is. I think the leading hypothesis that's out there right now is that perhaps it's some kind of autoimmune condition. So maybe it's not the Lyme disease itself, but the infection with Lyme disease kind of started some autoimmune condition to start. Anaplasmosis, this is increasing a lot in our area. This is another bacteria, very, very similar to Lyme. Slightly shorter transmission period, about 24 hours, but very, very similar symptoms. Generally no rash with this one, and this is generally a week after exposure is when you start to see symptoms. This can be associated with blood product transfusions as well. And in very rare cases, if this is left untreated, this can be fatal. You absolutely know you're sick with anaplasmosis. There's no question if you are unwell or not. And then we have babesiosis. So these are the three kind of main pathogens we have. This one's a parasite. Transmission is similar to Lyme. And this one, again, very similar, except you also go anemic with this one. So symptom onset is usually a little bit further after. And speaking of tick bites, I just want to note 75% of people diagnosed with Lyme disease don't ever remember a tick bite. So if a doctor ever tells you, if you didn't have a tick bite, there's no way. That's not true at all. Babesiosis, a lot of people can clear the infection on their own. They do test this when you donate blood. They now test for babesiosis because they had some cases with organ transplants where they didn't realize the donor had babesiosis, and then they did a transplant, and the patient then got babesiosis. More rare, we also have Powassan virus. So this is a virus. Its transmission period is a lot shorter. It's about 15 minutes. The symptoms are fever, headache, vomiting, weakness. This can progress into brain swelling, so this one can get really serious. There is no treatment. There is no cure for this one. It's just sort of, with some medical help, try to manage symptoms as best you can and hope that your body can fight it off. Again, very, very rare. There have been about 25 cases in New York over the last 15 years. So this is not common at all. Rocky Mountain spotted fever. This one is also a bacteria. Transmission, it's kind of short, about 4 to 6 hours. This one, you may have seen pictures of it. You kind of get the rash on your hands. It kind of looks like measles, like your hands and your feet. But again, like the rest of tick-borne diseases, fevers, headaches, joint pain, things like that. And this one can be rapidly fatal if not treated. But again, you know you're sick with this one. There's no question. And ehrlichiosis is also a bacteria, very similar symptoms as well. And typically, older individuals are the most susceptible to infection. This is generally true with most tick-borne diseases, given either the younger we are, there's usually, between 5 and 10, and then usually over 60 or 65 are kind of most at-risk groups for these. These are folks that don't have super powerful immune systems. So generally they're getting infected more. Alpha-Gal syndrome, for our friend in Australia, I know this is a problem there as well. This one typically is transmitted by the Lone Star tick. I know I have both the deer tick and the Lone Star tick up there. The deer tick, there has been one case confirmed that it was transmitted by the deer tick. So that is not saying all deer ticks could possibly be carrying this. So this one is interesting. It's a sugar molecule. It's found in most mammals, not humans, and old world monkeys. So there is no minimum attachment time with this one. If a lone star tick that is carrying this bites you, it can be instant. So it makes you allergic to red meat or mammalian products. Some people get a very, very mild allergy. You know, you just kind of don't feel so great if you eat red meat or drink milk or dairy or something like that. Some people, and especially the more you're exposed to it, if you have multiple tick bites, the more sensitive your allergy can be. So some people can, you know, someone's cooking burgers across the way, they can have an airborne anaphylactic reaction to this. So we want to pay attention to this one because there is no treatment for this one. Some people sort of outgrow it. After a few years, they outgrow the allergy. Some people keep it forever. But there are a lot of different things that alpha-gal is found in. You know, it's not as simple as red meat and dairy. It's in gelatin, so it's in some foods. It's in some medications. It's in a lot of cosmetic products. Some vaccines have alpha-gal in it. So it's something, especially if somebody develops a very sensitive allergy, it's something to really pay attention to. Tularemia is another bacteria. It's transmitted in about a day. Again, the symptoms are very similar for most tick-borne diseases. And this one, it's kind of diagnosed based on how you get it, because this one's not just ticks. So you can be bitten by a tick to get this one. You can be bitten by a deer fly, or you can inhale it or ingest it, or skin contact with an infected animal can also transmit it. And then tick paralysis. This, in our area, is very, very rare. So this is a neurotoxin, and it's found in the saliva of the tick. So the transmission, if you want to call it that, transmission process takes about 24 hours. So this one, as the tick is attached, right, it's sending that neurotoxin in. So you're getting weaker and you're showing signs of paralysis. Typically it starts in the legs and then works its way upwards. And then you can have slurred speech, difficulty swallowing, respiratory issues. And as soon as you remove the tick, that neurotoxin stops. So once you remove the tick, within a few hours or a few days, the symptoms will start going away. I know, sorry, this is all depressing. So, Borrelia miyamotoi, this is the hard tick relapsing fever. We do have it here. We do see it. It's more prevalent in the Hudson Valley now than it is up this way. This is another bacteria. It's a type of Borrelia, so Lyme disease is also Borrelia. It transmits within a day, very, very similar to Lyme disease, except a rash is very rare. And this seems to be much more treatable than Lyme disease is. And I do want to take a second to talk about co-infections, because guess what? It doesn't have to be one. You can, in one tick bite, you can get multiple pathogens, depending on what the tick is carrying. So if a tick is carrying Lyme disease, anaplasmosis, and babesiosis and bites you, you could win the bad lottery, and you could get all three. So it's important to note that. So it's important when you go to a doctor, they have what they call a tick panel. And I think most physicians are moving to that, using a tick panel rather than just doing a test for Lyme disease, just in case there's something else there. Lyme disease and anaplasmosis are treated the same way, so you'll knock both of them out in one go, no matter which one you're being treated for. However, babesiosis is treated differently. So if you're getting treated for Lyme disease, you're not getting better, perhaps have your doctor check for other tick-borne pathogens. So, like I said before, our biggest enemy is the deer ticks. So those are the ones that are floating around here. So the larvae generally are not a problem. Like I said, Borrelia miyamotoi, that can be transovarially transmitted from mama tick to the larva. So that can be transmitted very, very low numbers, about 3%. So generally not an issue. They're about the size of a pinhead. If you can see them in there, you kind of need to shake it like a snow globe to be able to see them. They're very, very tiny. So they take a blood meal, and then they molt into the next stage of their lives, which is nymphs. So nymphs are our biggest enemies. They are most likely to infect humans. They are about the size of a poppy seed, so they're very, very tiny, and they're most active late spring, typically in the summer. So we're in t-shirts, we're in shorts, we have the most skin exposure, we're spending the most time outside. So they'll take a blood mammal, and then they will molt into the next stage of their lives. And the adult stage is the only time where we see morphological differences between the two. So the females are kind of like this bright red, orange, rusty kind of color, and the males are all black. And they will try to complete their life cycle. Generally, this happens in late fall. It coincides very nicely with deer hunting season. So typically they mate on the host, hence deer tick. White-tailed deer are a main host for them. The male has served his purpose, he dies. The female will overwinter, and when she comes out in the spring, she will lay about 2,000 eggs, and then she will die. So this is why tick control is so hard, because even if you have a die-off rate of over 90%, the tick population is still growing, and that's terrifying. So now I'm going to ruin your night. I'm so sorry. Why am I showing you a poppy seed muffin? Because they're not poppy seeds. So this is how small the nymphal ticks are. So this is why you can imagine 75% of people that are infected with Lyme disease don't remember a tick bite, because how likely are you to find that on your body? So we talked a little bit about the feeding process and kind of how Lyme works as this weird backwash cycle. These are the mouth parts of a tick. I know it's disgusting zoomed in, I'm so sorry. This bit in the center here, it's called a hypostome. So that is what goes into your skin. You see how they have those backward facing barbs on them? So they kind of get stuck into your skin, dogs, cats, whatever they're biting, so that they can kind of be cemented into the host. They also excrete this glue-like enzyme that literally cements them into the host so that they're able to stay and feed. So those two bits on the side, that's what you see when you're looking at a tick. You call it the head of the tick. So those lay laterally on your skin, and the hypostome goes in. And then they do have to excrete another enzyme to kind of let that glue go, to be able to let go. I know, sorry, it'll get better, I promise. So we did talk about this. This is just an up-close picture of a spirochete. So Lyme disease is a spirochete. It's kind of this corkscrew-shaped thing. It is the fastest-moving spirochete known to science. So this is why Lyme gets so complicated, because they have watched the spirochete in the bloodstream, right? The tick is feeding off of you, so it's in your bloodstream, and it can jump out of the bloodstream and lodge into tissues. So it's no fun. And again, this one is not transovarally transmitted, so they have to pick it up from something. What do they pick it up from? Typically, the most competent reservoir is the white-footed mouse. So there are a lot of different reservoirs for Lyme, anaplasmosis, babesiosis, all of those. They have varying levels of competency. So white-footed mice, if they're carrying the pathogen, I don't know who started it. It's like the chicken and the egg. But if the mouse is carrying it and a tick feeds off of it, 90% of the time it's going to pick up that pathogen. Generally, the larger the mammal gets, the less competent they are. So chipmunks are about 75% competent, squirrels are about 50% competent, and so on and so forth. So the infection can go back and forth between the two of them. So has anybody been in the area since early 2000s? Okay, so then when you were early 2000s, late 90s, was this something you talked about a lot? Were ticks really an issue?
Oh, no, we were talking about that.
Yep. So this is a map from the CDC. Mind you, CDC says it's definitely underreported, but these are just cases, they're just dropped in the county in which they were diagnosed. So this is 2001, 2023. So, yes, we have a growing problem. We also have a growing problem with anaplasmosis as well. Like I said earlier, it is rising in our area specifically. This is just the whole United States. So why is this happening? So land use changes are a big thing. So, you know, when you have these intact forests, you still have your reservoir, the mouse, you still have your vector, the tick, and you still have your pathogen, the Lyme bacteria. They're all there. They've been here. Otzi the Iceman had Lyme, apparently. It's been around for a while. However, when you kind of have these sprawling forests, your biodiversity is normal. It's stable. So you still have all of these things, but you also have your larger mammals. You have your predators. So you have your fox, your coyote, your bobcats, all of those things that, one, are not very competent reservoirs. So if ticks are feeding on them, then they're generally not picking up pathogens. And they hunt the smaller, more competent rodents. So it's kind of a system of checks and balances. But then we make these fragmented forests, right? We make these small little ecosystems. So we drive out predators, we drive down species biodiversity. So we're driving out these not competent reservoirs, which are the ones that we want. So we're making these great habitats for the really competent reservoirs. So we're just kind of feeding that cycle. And what about climate change? So climate change has definitely impacted ticks and tick-borne diseases throughout the world. So we're seeing longer questing and activity periods. So questing is when they're searching for food. So typically ticks will be like on the edge of a blade of grass waiting for you to walk by and unknowingly jump on. Not actually jump, they'll just grab. We're also having, maybe this winter was an exception, but we're having a lot of midwinter thaws. So we're seeing earlier springs, later falls, so these ticks can remain active for a lot longer. We have increased survival rates. We are also seeing more heat-tolerant phenotypes. So we're seeing this in Africa, we're seeing this in Europe, and we're also seeing exotic species establishing themselves in other areas. For example, here, the Asian longhorn tick. We never had that before. We had it was in New Jersey first, 2017. Don't quote me on that date, close to there though. Geographic expansion as well. So they can establish in latitudes further north than they ever could because it's getting a little bit warmer. Migrating birds also are really great at dropping ticks in new areas and helping establish those new populations. And we're also seeing an increased incidence of tick-borne diseases. We're seeing an increase further north, but we are seeing a decrease further south. So we're kind of seeing all of that shift more northward. So let's go to Florida. I'm just kidding, don't do that. Meet Nala Roome, this is my dog. So quiz time, when are ticks active? Someone said all the time. Yes, so fun fact, I have pulled ticks off of her in every single one of these photos. She is treated multiple ways, but they still get on her. So if the temperature is above 39 degrees, deer ticks are active. So yes, you can be walking out in the snow and ticks can be active. So yes, they're more active in the summer than they are in the winter, but they are still out in the winter. Talking about tick-borne disease rates in New York. So we're gonna ignore 2020 and 2021. Given COVID, everything was a little wonky with reporting on other things. So you kind of see that big dip there, but we're gonna ignore that. 2022, they changed the case definition of Lyme disease, so we did see a spike, but generally we are trending upward. You can kind of see year to year, we like wax and wane a little bit. A lot of times we kind of see these periods associated with mast seasons when the oak trees are producing acorns, because that's great for mice, right? So when we're doing great things, not we, the earth, is doing great things for mice, they're doing great things for Lyme, unfortunately. So looking at where it is around New York, this is incidence by county. For left is Lyme disease, right is anaplasmosis. So again, generally Hudson Valley and Capital Region are kind of the highest incidence rates in the state, but that's not to say it's not almost everywhere else as well. So where do we rank with the other states? So for Lyme, these numbers are from 2022. They do have Lyme numbers for 2023, but they don't have anaplasmosis, so I wanted to compare apples to apples. So we're in the top 10, unfortunately. Vermont and Rhode Island kind of bring up the top, and Maine is usually pretty high up there as well. All right, the happy part, prevention. Let's talk about something good. So tick bite prevention. So there's chemical control versus natural control. This bottle on the left here, this yellow bottle, permethrin, this is meant for clothing and gear, not skin. They don't sponsor me in any way, shape, or form, but I do swear by this. I have picked up over 7,500 ticks. I know, how did I choose this career? I don't know, but here I am. But I use this, I swear by it. You treat your clothes with it, and it's an acaricide, so it kills ticks. on contact, so they'll still crawl on you, but they'll die shortly after. The University of Rhode Island did a study on permethrin. Even if you just treat shoes and socks, you are 74 times less likely to be bitten by a tick than if you don't have any spray. So some people don't love, spraying the clothes. I pick up ticks for a living, so I definitely spray my clothes. But just shoes and socks does make a huge difference. You can also buy clothing that's pre-treated with permethrin. What is it called? Insect shield. So you can do that, or you can buy it. Walmart has it, Dick's has it, Amazon has everything. So you can spray it yourself. It lasts 6 to 8 washes if you spray it yourself. The impregnated clothing that you purchase, that lasts for like 50 weeks or something, a lot longer, but they are a little pricey. You can also use DEET. The studies go back and forth with this. So some studies show, yes, there's a significant difference if you use DEET versus not. Others show, bless you, that there's no difference at all. So they go back and forth. So does it help, does it not? Sometimes, maybe. For me, I usually put it on because I also don't want to get bitten by mosquitoes. And then natural control, lemongrass, eucalyptus oil, and water is supposed to make a good natural repellent. There is no science behind this, so I can't say yay or nay for it. Some people swear by it, and with ticks, whatever works, great. Just one thing to note, bees do love lemongrass, so just keep that in mind if you're going to use this. Tick safe zones. I put safe in quotes for a reason, because I don't think we can ever call anything a tick safe zone. So you can make safer zones in your yard. So deer ticks really love that edge habitat. So if you have your nice manicured lawn and you're up against a field or the woods or something like that, that edge habitat, that's their jam. That's where they love to be. So if you make a barrier around that area, ticks, they're lazy. A deer tick is not going to move more than 1 square meter in its entire life unless it's moved, which it can very easily be moved. It hops on a bird, it hops on a cat, it hops on a squirrel. So it can move. So this barrier, the tick is not going to walk across it. A squirrel will, a chipmunk will. So it can help, but it's certainly not going to make anything foolproof. There are a couple other things here. You can make sure the lawn is well maintained. If you have like playground things, swings and stuff, don't keep them in overgrowth area and things like that. And also protecting yourself. So when you're outside gardening, hiking, whatever you're doing, wearing a hat, especially if you have longer hair, trust me, once it's in, it's in. It's very, very hard to get it once it's in there. Long sleeves, long pants, and light colors. So the less skin exposure you have, the tick is not going to bite through pants or through a shirt or anything like that. Cannot bite through clothing. And if you wear light colors, you're more likely to find it. So like your pants, you'd probably see something black crawling on them. Me? No. Do as I say, not as I do. And then closed-toed shoes. Sometimes ticks, they do this with dogs too. They'll bite kind of in between the toes. And also wearing tick repellent, wearing an acaricide. And if you are hiking, trying your best to stay out of that overgrowth. Where do we look for ticks? So tick checks are very important. So generally a deer tick is going to crawl around for a little bit before it decides to bite you. So if you find it before it bites you, then it's not a problem. It's still gross, but it's not a health problem. So inside or behind the ears, hairline, kind of like moist areas, armpits, back of the neck. Inside your belly button is, my roommate in college had, nope. Around the waistline, legs, behind the knees, between the toes. I do want to talk about tick removal. So what we should always do, we always want to use tweezers to pull them out. You want to get as close to the skin as you can. You want to get as close to its head as you can. So like I told you, you have this terrible backwash cycle. This is how these pathogens get transmitted. So if you then take tweezers and squeeze its midgut, what are you doing? Exactly. Exactly. So you don't want to do that. You want to get as close to the head as you can. I work a lot with farmers and loggers. So a lot of them are like, yeah, I don't have tweezers in my pocket. So the number one thing is to get the tick out. If you're in your backyard and you can just walk into your house and grab tweezers, do that. But, if you are 10 miles into a hike and you're camping, you're backpacking, you're not coming back that night. Don't leave it in for a day. In that point, yes, then use your fingers, pull it out. But the best thing to do is get as close to the head as you can with tweezers. So things to not do, the burnt out match, any kind of oil, peppermint oil, Vaseline, all different things like that. You don't want to do that. Like I said before, they cement themselves into the host. So sometimes this does work. But the thing is, you have to know how long that tick has been attached. Because if it's been attached too long, it's not going to work. Because what they're going to want to do if you're burning it alive or suffocating it with oil, it's going to want to back out. But remember I said it has to secrete that glue-like enzyme to let go. It can't do that quickly. So what you may prompt it to do is regurgitate. And that's the mid-gut stuff coming up. So you don't want to speed up that process of transmission. Our pets. We can vaccinate our dogs for Lyme disease. We are close to being able to vaccinate ourselves for Lyme disease. Pfizer and Valneva, Pfizer and somebody, just finished phase 3 of their clinical trial for the Lyme vaccine, and they found it is 70% effective, which is 70% more than 0, so that's nice. I think the vaccine for dogs is about 50% effective, and you can use different tick preventives. You can do this for cats too. Treated collars, there's oral treatment, there's the flea and tick treatments that you kind of like put down their back, like the greasy stuff. I always keep a lint roller in my car. This works better for shorter haired dogs, not longer haired ones. But if a tick is crawling around, it works for you too. Lint roll your clothes before you get back in the car or before you go in your house, if you're gardening or something, or your dog. And you will stick a tick to that. And tick checks are important as well. So, one of the most, I know this is disgusting and I'm sorry. One of the most important things, identifying engorged ticks, right? Because if it's not that engorged, we're not super worried about it because it hasn't been attached that long. But when they're like this, the odds of disease transmission are a lot higher. So you want to know what it is so you know what to look out for. Does anybody know how many of these are deer ticks? I mean, I gave you a bad angle, so I kind of cheated. But in order to identify ticks, because they all look like swelled up grapes. They all turn like a grayish, beigeish color. When they're even those bright red females that I showed you, they turn gray when they're engorged. So you're not going to look at it by color. But the scutum, that's the hard plate, like right by their head, that never changes in shape or size. So that is how you can identify what bit you. So the deer ticks, they just have a black circle on them. The dog ticks, I kind of call it like a tie-dye looking thing. I don't know how else to describe it. And then the Lone Star tick, Lone Star, it's not a star, it's a dot. But that way, if you know what has bit you, your friend, your dog, whatever it is, then you know what pathogens can this carry. So you know what to look out for, what to talk to your doctor about. Because if you get bit by a Lone Star tick, you don't need to be tested for Lyme. You cannot get Lyme from a Lone Star tick. You can only get it from a deer tick. So this next slide has a lot on it. Just bear with me. So what role do deer play in all of this? Right, we call them the deer tick. So I thought I was so smart in grad school. To get a whole bunch of tick surveillance done quickly, I went to deer processing stations on opening day of hunting season because they have to give you the county and the town in which the deer was tagged. So I was like, oh, perfect, easy surveillance. But we found that the rates of Lyme in these ticks were exponentially lower than the ones we pick up just like from the vegetation around. And we were like, what in the world is going on with this? So we kind of looked into the literature. We went back another year to note if ticks were attached or not to these deer. Not a single one that was attached to these deer was carrying the Lyme pathogen. Deer have a prophylactic immune response to the Lyme pathogen. So if a tick that has the Lyme pathogen feeds on deer blood, it clears the Lyme out of its system. So deer do indirectly play a role with spreading Lyme disease, indirectly. They don't have a direct role in doing anything with the pathogen because they have this immune response. However, they are the main breeding site, so they help propagate tick populations. So if you were to do a mass deer culling, yes, it'll take about 10 years, but you will see a decrease in human cases of Lyme. Opossums. I had to find the cutest picture because they're not the cutest animal. But opossums are very interesting. They kill about 90% of ticks that feed on them. They're really good at grooming. So they pick them off. I think they eat them sometimes. It's estimated that one opossum can take out about 5,000 ticks in one season. So if you have one in your yard, welcome it. And household pets. So household pets can serve as what we call sentinel species. So my dog is very spoiled. So she sleeps in my bed. She's on the couch with me. She's everywhere. So, she's treated out the wazoo for tick-borne pathogens. But, she can go out in the yard. She can pick up a tick. While the tick is crawling around, she's sleeping in bed with me. The tick can crawl off of her and onto me. This can happen with dogs. This can happen with cats. And I'm sure any other animals that you put in your bed. So they can act as a sentinel species. We did, I think it was in the town of Shenango, we had teamed up with a vet to test waste bloods from dogs, so not necessarily sick dogs, just general testing from dogs to see the positivity of Borrelia, the Lyme pathogen. So 34% of them were positive for the Lyme pathogen, and this was out of 362 dogs. So that's a pretty high number. So always checking pets to keep them safe and yourself safe is very important. When I was working on my dissertation, interesting stuff, pet ownership was associated with an increased probability of Lyme. However, that effect was limited to cat owners only in my data set, not dog owners. So that was really interesting. When I thought more about it, it kind of made sense. I didn't, hindsight's 2020. I didn't ask about indoor-outdoor cats, so that would have been very helpful. But cats hunt rodents, right? Dogs do sometimes, but not like cats. Cats generally don't have their perimeter. Your dog, even if you don't have a fence, your dog generally has their area. Cats do what they want. So they're kind of in that overgrowth. They're fighting with rodents, things like that. So it does kind of make sense. And also, a lot of our public health messaging is about dogs. Take care of your dog, check your dog, treat your dog. So maybe people are doing that, which is awesome. But don't forget cats too. So what I do right now at work, I work with commercial fishermen, kind of irrelevant for ticks though, forestry workers and agricultural workers. So as you would imagine, there's an increased risk for any outdoor workers because, the number one public health messaging is avoid tick habitat. I'm really not going to tell a farmer or a logger that because that's not going to go over well. So different jobs can have different risks. Logging, conventional logging where you're felling the trees by hand with a chainsaw, you're going to have a much higher risk than if you're doing mechanized logging and you're sitting in a machine. Foresters, they're often on foot in the woods, so they have a higher risk. DEC in New York, they had an opt-in program where if they spent, X amount of hours in the field, DEC would order them permethrin-impregnated clothing. So it was an opt-in program though, so it was, if they chose to do it, they could do it, but they didn't have to. Ag workers are the most at-risk group in Europe. So in Europe, they have very, very well studied forestry workers and ag workers for their risk of tick-borne disease transmission. We haven't done anything in the Northeast since the early 90s. And we talked about the 90s and how we weren't really talking about ticks. So we haven't really done anything with them since the 90s. In Europe, the ag workers have a higher risk than even forestry workers and hunters. So their seroprevalence rates of Lyme were 20 to 60%. Keep using the wrong keyboard. So I had done a study with forestry workers in New York, the area that's highlighted in red, and we wanted to see seroprevalence rates of Lyme, anaplasmosis, and babesiosis. So we looked at forestry workers, and I compared them to a cohort of firefighters and a cohort of healthcare workers. So we had about 100 forestry and firefighters and about 50 healthcare workers. So what we found were forestry workers, they did have higher prevalence rates of tick-borne diseases, but not as stark of a difference as we thought. for anybody that loves stats, none of our p-values were significant for this. But forestry workers were significantly more likely to find ticks on themselves when they work, as you would expect, and more likely to have removed ticks from themselves. And then as they're examining timber quality and value and doing harvest planning, that's the most at-risk task that they do for being bitten by a tick. And we did ask them, this is gonna ruin your day and I'm so sorry. We asked them about, in the last 6 months, how many ticks have you encountered? And the answers ranged from 0 to 1,000. So when we saw 1,000, we were like, are you sure? But then we were talking to a few guys that work in Albany. So there is a nature preserve called Pine Bush out there, and they say they do 100 tick days. So they have a vial, and as the ticks are on them, they collect them. Once they get to 100 ticks, they get to go home for the day. And they're usually home by 11 a.m. And the first person told me this, and I was like, all right. And then another person said it, and another person said it. So I'm really smart. So me and my dog went there. There's a lot of ticks. So also ag workers. This is not New York, and I apologize. But I just finished up a randomized control trial in Vermont. My red line's very thin here. It's the southern half of Vermont. Sorry for that. But we wanted to look at the effect of thermocell tick control tubes on tick density and then reported tick encounters in ag workers. We focused on dairy and livestock farmers, and we had a treatment versus a control group. So I'll show you the tubes on the next slide, but there was a placebo and a treatment group. So everybody had tubes. Some of them had the pesticide in them, some of them did not. So these are the tick tubes. It's not glamorous, but the best way to describe them, they are the exact same size as a toilet paper roll. And a lot of people, you can do them homemade. So these were designed for residential properties. We wanted to test them on ag properties. They work really well on residential properties at decreasing tick numbers. So what we wanted to do was focus on areas of high rodent traffic, so around barns and houses, and see if we could have the same effect. So in these tubes, there's cotton. It's treated with permethrin, a caricide that kills ticks on contact. So the cotton, the mice, the most competent reservoir, they come and take the cotton for nesting material, and in essence, they're giving themselves like a flea and tick bath. So they're killing any ticks that are on them. It's relatively inexpensive, and again, you can make them yourselves. You can save paper towel rolls, toilet paper rolls, and you don't even have to go buy cotton. You can buy cotton, you can save dryer lint, and then just buy permethrin, spray that cotton, and you kind of put them in areas of high rodent traffic. So the study was relatively disappointing. So we got 45 farms in the study. We did 10 tick collections over 2.5 years. And we collected ticks with the dragging method. So it's a corduroy cloth, and you just kind of walk with it. So this is a horrible way to say it, but you're using yourself as bait. So my CO2 signature, my thermal signature, is telling the ticks there's blood, there is a mammal there. So the corduroy, because of the ridges, it's really easy to grab onto, and it's a white cloth, so then I can take them and kill them. So it's like my little vengeance against ticks. We didn't collect too many ticks. Most of them were deer ticks, that's Ixodes scapularis, and about 30% of them were dog ticks. So between the treatment and control, treatment is A, control is B in here, there was not a significant difference at all between tick densities on the treatment farms versus the control farms. So tick encounters, we had a fabulous group of farmers in this study. We called them every other week for 32 weeks for 2 years, and they all answered me, which was incredible. So we asked them if they personally had any tick encounters in the last 2 weeks. An encounter is either a bite or a tick crawling on them. And then we asked them about other humans on the farm and other animals. And again, there was not a significant difference between the two groups, unfortunately. So we had talked to them afterwards, before we had analyzed the data. One of the last questions was, would you use these? If these are shown to work, would you use them? And overwhelmingly, the farmers were like, yeah, but you have to keep coming back and put them on my farm. And we were like, that wasn't really the point of this. Like, we want something that's sustainable. And I guess somebody can make a company, but a lot of it is time. They're very, very busy. Farming is a very, very difficult industry to be in, so they don't have the time to do it. One of the farmers in the study, he had been diagnosed with anaplasmosis. They had advised him to be admitted into the hospital. He was very, very sick, but he's a dairy farmer. Dairy farmers don't get a day off. And he's a sole farmer. He doesn't have any workers. So he walked out of the hospital and he said, if I was an employee, I wouldn't have shown up for work. Like, I would have stayed in the hospital. But he's like, I don't have that luxury. So we're just trying to find something that is easy enough for farmers to help protect them a little more so stuff like this doesn't happen to them. Sorry, that was a lot. But does anybody have any questions, any comments? Oh, my ticks.
You can take your tick back. And so we do have a question back here.
How many different species are known of ticks?
In New York or the world? A lot, hundreds for sure. Because there's also soft, like what I'm talking about here are hard-bodied ticks, and this is just what's found in New York, but there's also soft-bodied ticks. I don't know as much about the soft-bodied ticks though. So there's a lot though.
You had commented earlier about you went to deer processing centers and sort of doing a survey there, and I'm thinking, like what about veterinarians? How, are they, more likely to get, again, a dog will come in or cat will come in
And have them.
yeah.
They could. I mean, I think it's possible. We could probably team up with some vets to get some ticks from them.
I'm also
possible.
wondering whether they're just more prone to be actually getting Lyme disease.
Who, animals?
No, the vets, because you bring a dog in, the tick jumps onto them and they don't notice it, and they.
That's true. I think it's entirely possible, for sure. I imagine that's something vets are pretty vigilant about, not wanting to get bitten by a tick. So hopefully they're kind of like extra cautious.
Right. They're usually wearing white anyway, so. Right.
That's true.
Actually, we do have a couple of questions here. Our friend Lindsay from Adelaide, Australia asks, and it says, it's a random question, does that permethrin trick work on silverfish, which we have an infestation in dark corners of our house? Or is it permethrin pretty much just a tick insecticide?
It definitely will kill other things. I don't know about the silverfish.
All right.
But that is one I do. Thank you for bringing that up, because I do want to note one thing with the permethrin. Always read the directions before you use pesticide, of course.
Right.
But it is harmful to cats when it's wet. So always be mindful of where you're spraying it. Cats can absorb it through their skin a lot easier than dogs can, humans can, anything like that. So like as you're spraying, a pair of pants or a shirt or something, just be mindful of where it is. When it's dry, it is not harmful to them at all. But it can, if a cat is like sprayed with permethrin, it can mess with their central nervous system. So I do like, it is on the label, but I do like to say that to people so they're aware.
All right, another question from the chat. Charles asks, are doctors in the area beginning to learn how to treat Lyme?
Yes and no, I think is the answer to that question. So I think it is much more widely understood, the blanket term of Lyme disease. I don't think there's as many problems with, ordering a test for Lyme disease in the area anymore, because we're seeing such an influx of it. However, I think, there are some doctors that are on board with Lyme as a chronic condition. The testing is not perfect for Lyme disease. You have sensitivity and specificity for testing. They're both at like 85% for Lyme, which is better than nothing, right? But you want that closer to 100%. So people can, especially if you put it off, farmers, I'm fatigued and my muscles hurt. Wow, I'm a farmer. Same thing for parents when you have young kids. I'm exhausted. Sounds like a parent. So a lot of people do put off treatment. Lyme is known as the great imitator because of these blanket symptoms that can be due to a myriad of other things. So people put off treatment, and you kind of have that sweet spot window for the antibody testing. And once you're out of that window, the testing isn't as great. It's not terrible, but it's not as great. So it is possible for somebody to have Lyme and not test positive for it. So,
Oh, you have a couple of questions
whoa,
back
got
here.
a lot.
Here, got a question here.
So I saw on the screen you mentioned you could see the antibodies if people have had Lyme. Is that correct?
Yes. So, yes and no. You will have antibodies for Lyme. So there's IgM and IgG. One tells you about like an active infection. One tells you that you've had one. However, the one that says, you've had it at some point, it may not be there forever. Some people, it'll last several years. Some people, it'll only last a few months.
But that's not going to be an immunity toward it, right?
No. So there are different strains of Lyme disease. There's like 9. I think there's 9 of them. So you can be infected with like type M or type A. So you will, for a very short period of time, have slight immunity to whatever version you got. But you can still be, if you have M, you can get A 2 days from now, kind of thing. So,
full disclosure, I just was diagnosed with Lyme at the top of the year.
oh no, I probably
because
just
because
depressed
my
you so
knee
much.
ballooned up.
Yes.
But I saw a rheumatologist in New York City, was on Doxy for a month, and I've been fine.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Another question back here.
Drew, there was a great shoe-in question regarding doctors and their ability to understand the Lyme aspect of it. But if I use a scenario of, say I find a rather engorged one on my neck or on my thigh or someplace, and I'm able to pull it and put it in a bag because now I'm going to the emergency room
Yep.
at one of our local hospitals to have blood work, the thing checked out. Are the emergency rooms as informed as, thank you very much, I'll call you doctor, because you are, of everything that you've listed? What would they begin to be testing for? They're going to obviously look at the tick, send the tick someplace to get it checked, because that was 10 years ago I had a tick, and it was, well, it could have Rocky Mountain spotted fever, so we're going to send it out.
Yeah.
And we didn't have anything. But obviously we're here now, but to make a long story short, if I go to an ER here, any of the local hospitals, what are they going to do with a tick bite scenario?
So if you had just removed the tick, the ER is definitely not going to test you because most of these are antibody tests or some of them are PCR, so direct bacterial detection. But both of those things take time. So your immune response to make the antibodies takes time. And then for the bacteria to replicate, to be able to do to detect it in a PCR also takes time. So if you kind of go in and say, I pulled this off just now, the ER probably won't test you because it's probably going to take about 2 to 4 weeks for symptoms to show up. Generally now, physicians will not send out a tick for testing. You can certainly do it yourself. Upstate Medical University, they have a lab. They test for a fee. I think it's like $35, and you can get it tested. They're pretty quick. It's just a couple of days. But the one caution with testing the tick, if it's negative, it's great information, right? Because you're like, okay, great, I have nothing to worry about. If it comes back positive, it doesn't necessarily mean something was transmitted. So, if you, I feel like it's like a double-edged sword for the ER question, because if you go in with an immediate tick bite, they're not going to test. But we have, in Cooperstown, we have a lot of anaplasmosis lately, so we have a lot of cases coming in. We have a lot of older folks coming in, no idea they had a tick bite, but debilitated sick. So then in the ER, when they come in that sick, they will run a tick panel. So I think knowledge is increasing. Can it get better? Absolutely. But I think it's better than we were 10 years ago.
10 years ago, they immediately gave me an antibiotic. Take this.
Yeah, so they do have, the CDC does recommend a prophylactic dose of doxycycline. It's supposed to be like a tick bite prophylaxis. So if you have to meet 5 criteria. Existing in the Northeast, check. Know it was a deer tick, because this is only for Lyme. It had to have been attached for 36 hours. You can't have any sort of condition that would make doxycycline bad for you. And I forget what the 5th one is. But if you meet all 5 of them, they will give you a one-time 200 milligram dose of doxy to sort of like nip it in the bud. That is shown to be effective for Lyme disease. There's no data for the other tick-borne diseases. That's something that the hospital that I work for is talking about doing a study on to see if we can have a blanket tick bite prophylaxis to cover a myriad of conditions. We're hoping.
All right, another question here.
So you recommended using these tweezers to remove them, and then people don't have them with them. If I go to an outdoor store, they sell these little flat aluminum discs with like little keyhole slot
Yep.
that you pull them off. Are those
Yes.
effective as well?
Yes and no. Yes, they are effective if the tick is big enough. Like those tick spoons, and I think I have a tick key on my keychain. If it's a nymph and it's not that engorged, it's too small. So that key is just gonna come right up off of it.
Okay.
So, but larger ticks, it does work great for.
So you said something about a sweet spot time of when you're supposed to do that.
Yeah.
So when is it?
Generally, it's like between 2 and 6 weeks after a bite is kind of when you have that biggest peak in the IgM.
And if you had a tick bite and then you got treated with Doxy for say a month, and then should you get tested again to see if it is gone?
I'm not sure what clinically is recommended for that, because you probably wouldn't have IgM, indicating an active infection, but you may still have the IgG, which would show you like Lyme is around but it's not active in your system. So I'm not sure that it would tell you anything super useful. You know what I mean? So, and I'm not sure. I'm a PhD, not an MD, just to be clear. So I'm not totally sure on the clinical recommendations for that.
In addition to possums, are there any arachnids or insects that feed on ticks?
So not anything that considers it like a staple. Chickens will eat ticks, guinea hens eat a lot of ticks, but it's not like a main food source for them. So it's not like if I put chickens in my yard, I'll be tick free. They'll eat some of them, but they're not gonna kind of be like your main control method.
All right, any other questions?
So you can have your own lawn sprayed to protect against ticks. There are companies that come in and do it, but that's something that needs to be constantly done because the deer, the squirrels, the birds, all that stuff that comes back into your yard, it has to be constantly done.
So the government or anything is not spraying skin lines?
They are not, no.
All right, we do have another question from the chat. It says, what's the best thing to do if the head of the tick breaks off and remains connected?
That's okay. I know there are a lot of kind of like old wives' tales that Lyme can still transmit if that happens. That's not true. So that happens, and it's a god-awful noise when it happens. But if the tick is kind of cemented in, it hasn't excreted that other enzyme to let go, you'll pop the body off the head. That's okay. Don't dig it out. Don't burrow a hole in your arm or wherever the tick has bitten. Just kind of treat it like any kind of wound, like peroxide. Keep it clean, and the head will work its way out.
You don't have to necessarily go ahead and dig it out.
Nope.
No.
Nope.
All right. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mandy. It was
Thank you.
a great shot. I was really taken by those two maps that you saw from like 2002 to 2023. It's just like a complete cover, and it so clearly it's something it's very very prevalent here in the area. And so if you're going to walk outside and go I was just in the woods earlier today, and I did a tick check, knowing that it was coming here. You were coming in here, so today. But anyway, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Again, especially for those who may have been who are here for the first time or have been here in a while. I'll be happy to do a tour of the telescopes and show you some of the images that we've taken with our scopes. Let's see here. It is 10 after. Let's say at 20 after, in about 10 minutes. I'll just meet you out in the lobby and take you in. Also, again, if you paid to get in, we have a rule here that you're not supposed to leave Kopernik until you look through a telescope, which is not going to happen tonight. But we can give you a card to come back on another night. Hopefully, one that's free. Well, the skies are free of clouds. And actually, I'm going to actually move a little bit. And Art, can you help me move the because I want to move I want to point out our quilt here. And I promised Lindsay in Adelaide, Australia, that I would show her this. So here we go. So this is a quilt that was actually made by the wife of one of our board members, and we are raffling it off in September. It's an extraordinary quilt. I'm going to turn on the... And so if September 19th at our Astrofest Astronomy Festival. If you're interested, the tickets are $5 a ticket, or you can get 5 tickets for $20, and you can buy those at the gift shop. Also at the gift shop, that's where you would go to get your card to come back on another day. So next week, our talk is going to be about science and religion and the pursuit of happiness. And this is Dr. Tom O'Brien, who's actually on our board. And this is the 4th in his series of science and religion talks. So thanks again for coming up, and I'll see you. For those that want to tour the scopes, I'll be out there at 20 after.
A question about the quilt.
A question about the quilt.
Last week.
Yes.
At one point, I think you mentioned to me that the plan for this quilt was available.
Yes, and I spoke to the board member. He was going to get me that information, and I have yet to receive it from him. I will remind him of that. And
Because whether I win it or not, I still covet it. And I know a quilter
that could
of
pull it
high
off.
quality in central Pennsylvania that probably I could persuade to.
So, just to let you know, I think it's $500 worth of material on this bill. And it took her about, I think she said, okay. So the lady who made this, I think I know they told me it was $500 worth of material to make this, and about, I think she said 500 hours of time. So.
Yeah, I am familiar with, because I have purchased quilt tops for this person, and I've gotten appraisal for them, and, yeah, but this is a gorgeous quilt.
While you're thinking, I already have it.
All right. Well, so thanks again. And for those that are interested in the tour, I'll be out there in about 5 minutes.